This is the Surly Grognards for April 20th, 2015. This is Peter Bowman, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. How are you doing tonight, Eric?
I'm doing all right.
Excellent. Anywho, so tonight we are going to be talking about a particular type of video game. One that Eric and I both are actually pretty conversant with and have played a bunch of, and are largely horribly addicted to in large numbers of ways.
But not if this specific one, as many people get dragged into. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about MMOs. Primarily, we're going to be talking about MMORPGs, because those are the ones we've mostly played. But there are some massively multiplayer online games that are not RPGs. They exist.
Yes.
But the MMORPG is massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
Right.
That's what it stands for. And I'm
Though
sure
not a lot of role-playing goes on in most of them anymore.
Well, the big thing about it, though, Eric, is it's not so much about the role-playing like tabletop. You have to look at it more like they're RPGs in the sense of...
In the sense more like your
like
Final Fantasies, your Skyrims, and the like.
Exactly. They're computer RPGs.
Yeah.
And that's fine. People...
Well, it used to be you could find actual like tabletop-style RPGing going on with people and character and whatnot, but they've been largely trolled so far underground that it's impossible to find them unless you're like know the secret handshake.
It varies by game.
Server.
Yeah. And specifically by server.
Yeah.
Now the MMORPG did grow out of certain things. I forget. I think the generally accepted first MMORPG was Meridian 51. I want to say.
I will say okay.
I can't remember. I never. This is going off the top of my head.
Yeah.
The first one I heard of was Ultima Online.
Yeah, that was the first one I also heard of.
Now, before that, when I heard about when someone described what Ultima Online was, I said, "Oh, that sounds like a MUD with graphics." Because I played MUDs in college. MUDs are multi-user dungeons. They are text-based. Well, for those of you who are looking around today, they're text-based MMOs. There are no graphics. It's like doing a text adventure, except that there are bunches of people playing all at once. Usually they're PvP and open PvP.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get to why I have certain attitudes about MMOs after we get that. It all grows out of my mudding experience. The big difference between MUDs and MMOs is most MUDs, after you hit a certain level, you could become what was called you could become basically a game master / wizard or what have you. Whatever. Different MUDs had different terms for it. Where you actually basically became one of the creators for the MUD and helped design content and such. But you basically generally had to hit a certain level so that the existing people who ran the game knew who you were, knew that you were dedicated to the game, and you actually had enough experience that they could accept that you would be able to contribute in some way, shape, or form.
This sounds doomed to failure.
It worked brilliantly, actually, for most MUDs, because they weren't truly massive. Usually, the most people you had signed up for them was a couple thousand. You'd never see more than like 100 people on it at a time. So, it's... But that grew into, the various MMORPGs. Meridian 59 was probably the first one. Ultima Online, I only heard about Meridian 59 after at one point I did research to figure out what actually was the first MMO, because people were giving me conflicted examples of it. The first one that I heard of was Ultima Online, which was a online version of the Ultima RPGs.
Yep. No, I remember. I remember that. I didn't play it, but I remember hearing about it.
I never played it either. I saw people playing it.
First one I saw being played was actually Phantasy Star Online.
Interesting.
And I was like, why the hell are you just sitting there attacking rabbits with your friggin' text sword? It's like, well, I need to level up. This sounds fucking stupid.
The first one I actually saw was EverQuest, which was sort of the big breakout MMO.
Yep, that was the one that that got all the attention.
And, I knew a number of people who were just completely hooked on it and saying, oh my god, it's the greatest game ever. And a friend of mine showed it to me, and I tried it and hated the fuck out of it. And was completely befuddled by, why the fuck would you play these games?
Right, right.
And I really didn't get into them until another friend of mine, who's sometime we mentioned on the chat a few times, my friend Peter, told me about this one MMO that he started playing because he knew some of the creators, because a bunch of them went to Brown and the Rhode Island Institute of Design, or I should say. So he knew them. They were sort of the same sort of they were they were either at the school or graduating around the time while Peter was there, and they basically wrote the game in like their one of their family's garages basically, and Peter knew about it and sort of saw some of the demo stuff, and basically once the game launched he played it because he saw how it was had been designed and thought it was interesting, and he really enjoyed it, so he told a bunch of his friends about it, and a bunch of us tried it out. I eventually got to okay, fine, I'll give it a shot. Just it's an MMORPG, and I saw EverQuest, and MMORPGs suck. And then I played Asheron's Call and decided to give it a shot, and it was very different than EverQuest, because EverQuest is like where a lot you see most MMOs go. It's class and level based. You got cooldown powers and such, auto attacking and all that stuff.
Right.
And Asheron's Call was very different. It was, instead of you had levels, but there were no classes. You bought skills. It was basically a point-based system. As opposed to classes level, it was level and points.
Right, right.
So you earned experience points, and that would determine what level you were, and you spent those experience points on your skills and your stats to raise them, and then as you gained levels, you'd earn skill points to buy new skills with. And eventually, after they retweet the game, you could upgrade skills from trained to specialized. That was something they added later. And the other big difference between Asheron's Call and the other MMOs out there was it was world-wise is one of the most unique fantasy worlds I've seen, because it had nary a elf, dwarf, orc, goblin.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
They created their own monsters from whole cloth, and some of them were amazing.
It did have lictors, though. I remember that.
Well, they had the Olthoi, who were giant death bugs.
They were lictors. They were 40k lictors. They looked exactly like 40k lictors.
No, they don't really look exactly like 40k lictors. They're a little bit too beetle-like, too smooth.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Some of the later versions of Olthoi looked more Tyranidy, I'll agree. But the original Olthoi looked like they had those sort of very smooth carapace that beetles have.
Yeah, okay. I guess so.
Apparently the Olthoi were based on a bug that they found in the garage one time when they were coding. They're like, what the fuck is that thing? That would make an awesome
our new monster.
And they're one of the major bad guys in Asheron's Call. They basically swarmed and taken over the entire world that the game takes place in. And I absolutely just love the sort of like the difference and so that's what got me hooked, was just like, A, there were a bunch of people I knew who were playing, and B, it was so different than the other MMO I tried, and I was like, this is actually, I can understand sort of why people like, okay, I can get into this now, because it's more sort of the type of game that I prefer, because I personally am a big sort of point-based game, role-playing game type of guy. And when I got into it, I did a bit of role-playing, although the people in my guild, it's called they're called Monarchies in Asheron's Call. None of them really role-played, so I was like, okay, fine, I'm okay with that. I was expecting more role-playing than there was, but I adapted pretty quickly.
Yeah, and for me, my first MMO was Dark Age of Camelot, actually.
Right.
Which, some people I knew were playing it. They're like, Eric, come play with us. It'll be awesome. Oh, no. Phantasy Star Online looked dumb. No, come play with us. It'll be awesome. Okay, which faction you guys are? We've got the elves. Okay.
Yes.
Wow, this is cool. There's this whole combat thing you like playing against other players, you say. Yes, and yeah, that's pretty much how I got hooked on, like, specifically, like, faction versus faction PvP,
Right.
Like, and like the small commando raids, because a lot of us played rogue types.
Right.
And no, I did not play an elf. I played a
No,
Celt
yes.
with spiky red hair and a bow, and I shot people in the face.
Yep.
Or rather, I shot people until they went, "Hey, look, there's a ranger. Let's get him!" And they run right into the nightshades hiding behind the trees.
Right. So yeah, if it hadn't been for the fact that most people you knew playing were playing in
Hibernia.
Hibernia, that's what it was.
Oh, I totally would have gone Midgard.
Midgard,
They
yeah.
had trolls.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, both of us. I ended up playing with those guys because I eventually was like, I'm a little tired of Asheron's Call. I'm intrigued by Dark Age of Camelot. It looks kind of neat. I know a bunch of people are playing. I've got time. What the hell? Sure, I'll buy a copy. So I bought a copy, started playing with them. Got caught up fairly too. It took me a long time to get fully caught up to you guys.
Yeah.
But I've sort of like caught up with like the mid-tier people for a long while. I like Eric. I totally would have gone Midgard if it hadn't been the fact that virtually everybody I knew was playing was Hibernia.
Yeah.
Because-
fucking elves.
It's not even fucking elves. It's the but Midgard has Vikings and trolls and dwarves and thanes. They had thanes.
Friggin' troll thanes. Oh my god, I get to be a troll and worship Thor and call lightning hammers from the sky.
I get to wear
Why aren't we on
chainmail,
that team?
smack people with a hammer, and call down lightning bolts from the sky. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
But no.
But no.
With the elves.
I'm okay with elves, so I was okay. Fine, I'll play an elf mentalist because screw with your brain.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, Hibernia might have had the fucking elves. They had a lot of really cool stuff about Celtic mythology, which I was reading a lot about at the time.
Right.
So I was like, Spriggans? They've got friggin' Spriggans here?
Right, and and there's some other interesting stuff too. Like they actually did a really nice job at sort of the whole sort of Seelie versus Unseelie thing too.
Yep, very much so.
Which was great, and it's like, okay, yeah, it turned out the Hibernian elves were actually the seed. I mean, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
they're basing this, and the thing is, they really did heavily do a lot of research on mythology for that game.
Yes.
Which is, again, another reason it felt so different than a lot of other MMOs, which is why I stuck with that one as long as I did.
Yeah, and yeah, there are a lot of things to like about it.
Yeah.
We disparagingly called Albion Mundania because for the longest time they had no non-human races.
Yep. Every race there in Albion was a different flavor of human,
Yep.
which I actually thought was kind of cool.
Yes, but
Like-
they were totally Mundania.
Sure, but thinking it's like, that's actually kind of awesome.
And the Scottish guys, I forget what they were called. But they wore kilts over. They always had kilts on.
Yes.
Didn't matter what you had equipped, you were wearing a kilt over it.
Yeah, I had one of the characters. I built characters for each faction on different servers because why the hell not?
Yeah.
And I forget what they were called also, but I had one. It was a Highlander, I think.
Highlander, yes.
Yeah, I had a Highlander Paladin that I rather liked because
Yeah, I had a...
the
I had
concept of a
Highlander.
Paladin running around with a kilt over his plate armor is fucking awesome.
Yes.
Tart. He basically he had his full tartan on and sporin and kilt, and then he's wearing plate armor underneath this. It's like, okay, that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I mean, not as awesome as being an 8-foot-tall slab of stone with a hammer and a car door strapped to one arm.
No, that's pretty freaking awesome. Although admittedly, my Thane was a dwarf because I love dwarves.
Because, duh, yeah. Shock, we both played Thanes, you played a dwarf, I played a troll.
Yeah. I also had a friar. We've told the story about friars before.
Friars, yes. Who looked like wizards but totally weren't.
It's I'm gonna stab this wizard in the back. Tink. It's a friar. Thump 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 thump.
Or my famous, aha. And yep, that looks like a lone friar there. I could tell it's a friar because his stick doesn't have a crook in it. So, I load up because rangers had different types of ammo for different types of armor. I knew that friars
leather.
were resistant to whatever armor pierced cloth, or whatever arrow pierced cloth, but vulnerable to a different type. So I loaded up the one that happened to be the one that cloth is good at resisting. And I shot him.
And you fired your big super shot, and not only did he resist
super
it,
shot,
he had
and
blade turn.
it bounced off his shield, and he turned to me and went and started throwing fireballs. And Hence the it's not a friar.
You're like, I'm totally set for this, and plink, blade turn. That's not a friar. I
And
see.
then fireballs.
Yeah, I see
'Cause,
nobody.
I didn't expect the friar to charge me with his stick and promptly knock me down until I was dead. Which I was prepped for, because I even had, like, the big super shot, then I was going to hit him with the snare and all this other stuff. But no. He just sat there and shot me with fireballs.
And you died. Stupid Albion.
Stupid Albion. Too many guys in dresses.
But yeah, so we both played Dark Age of Camelot for a while. Eventually, some the guys who were running the guild we were both in kind of drifted away. I don't remember why. Both Chris and Roach drifted away.
Yeah.
You weren't playing as much either. And all of a sudden, guild leadership fell on me and our friend Matt.
Oh, yes.
And I learned something that day. I hate running guilds in MMOs.
Yeah. I don't blame you.
It was a lot of work with very little return.
Yeah. No, I did my stint as guild leader in Warhammer Online. Yeah, I hated that.
Oh, I remember why Chris drifted away.
Star Wars Galaxies.
Right, yes. That's where you went too, I think.
There was a period where I just did not have a computer.
Right.
Honestly.
Right.
So I wasn't really playing anything, and eventually I got a computer and got dragged into Galaxies. So.
Yeah. But yeah, around that time,
space lizards.
Yeah. So I got drugged. I eventually was, I was getting sort of a bit burnt out on Dark Age of Camelot. Dabbled back into Asheron's Call for a while. What else did I dabble with? DDO a little bit, but my computer at the time was not really suited for DDO. Because DDO was ridiculously, Dungeons & Dragons Online was ridiculously high requirements for what it was at the time.
Yeah.
And then this little company called Cryptic Games announced their closed beta tests for this game called City of Heroes.
That was around the time where I got hooked on WoW, as everyone eventually did. The entire planet was hooked on WoW for a while.
WoW came out like a year or two after that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you. I'll let you know why.
City's older than I thought it was.
Oh
okay.
God, yeah. So I actually got into the closed beta. Played towards the end of closed beta. Played through the open beta, and then the game launched and bought the game. And I got completely hooked on City of Heroes. And I played it basically from its launch until it closed down 8 years later.
Yeah. I played it off and on. I didn't get into it till they had villains.
Right.
I
remember when you and Roach got into it because they actually had a sale on City of Villains for like $10.
Yeah, and we're like, boom! I am totally playing a supervillain. And that's where Gamma Emitter and Vrog came in.
Yep. And that was, I played a ton of City of Heroes. It was my game. That was like the MMO that like hit all my buttons. But yeah,
it was a good MMO. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
One of the things I really enjoyed about it was that gear did not affect the way you look. You picked your costume and you got to keep that costume. You looked cool the whole time, and you got extra costume slots so you can mess with it around with it and go to the tailor and mess with your costume whenever you wanted. It was pretty awesome.
Yep. And it did a lot of and much like the other MMOs that I stuck with for a bit, it broke in a lot of ways from other MMOs. Again, like Eric said, there was really no gear. Is the thing. I mean, there kind of was. There's things called enhancements that modified your powers, but they didn't really, they didn't change how you looked at all.
Yeah.
The way you looked was based on how you wanted to make your character look, and that was awesome. It was a superhero game, so there was a lot of different things. So it was designed around the concept of you're going to be fighting multiple things at once to make you feel like a badass. Because you're a fucking superhero.
Or villain.
Right. You have superpowers.
Go and use them.
Right. It was one of the first games where you could, like, fly indefinitely.
Yes. I remember when Aeon was coming out, there's all this hype about being able to fly. I was like, dude, I've played City of Heroes. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I remember someone saying, like, dude, You should try. I know you could fly for like an hour at a time. I'm like, dude, my blaster has permanent flight. I can fly as long as I want to.
Yeah, I made a super heroine that never touched the ground.
Right. It's like we are not impressed.
We're not impressed with you, Aeon. You have limited flight in certain zones with a timer. Screw that. My character never touches the ground.
Yeah, I love that about. There's just so many other different ways. The ways it was very different than other MMOs. You know, it had that the way you picked your powers and how you enhanced them and all that stuff. Just it felt different than other MMOs, which is why I stuck it. But WoW came out after City of Heroes did, and City of Heroes lost a bunch of people to WoW.
Everyone did.
Well, yeah, because Blizzard released an MMO, and the hordes of people who love Blizzard games went, must try!
Yes. And the entire world got hooked to WoW. This is because of the first company that let me play an orc, and they looked right. Of course, everyone was playing fucking Alliance, so I ended up over there for a while.
Right.
Tell you, everyone choosing the faction I have no interest in.
That's twice now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I actually started. I did eventually try WoW because it was out. I'm like, okay, fine. I got a copy of it on sale somewhere. I forget. Tried it, and this is during Vanilla WoW. I bounced right the fuck off. And I think part of it was, honestly, I already had City of Heroes. I already had my MMO. Why would I need WoW? Why would I need what WoW's giving me when City of Heroes is giving me everything I want?
Yeah.
And yeah, so eventually, you know,
WoW had orcs and trolls and giant minotaurs.
But did it have
undead?
But it did have superheroes.
Why are you all hanging out with the fucking elves again?
Yes, but could I shoot laser beams from my eyes?
No, I don't think you could do that in WoW.
You can do that in City of Heroes.
Yeah, I will say this. City of X did let me play an 8-foot-tall, powered, armored space pirate badger.
It did.
And that was pretty awesome.
You can make a pretty convincing-looking orc in City of Heroes, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah, I did a couple times.
But yeah, so I tried, and then, you know, eventually Burning Crusade came out, and a friend of mine gave me a copy of the expansion, so I was like, oh, fine, I'll give it another shot. Got further and bounced off. I eventually did play WoW, and got pretty hooked on it for a while. But this is after I didn't really play WoW wholeheartedly until after City closed down, basically. And eventually, a friend of mine bought a copy of. Basically, you know, I bought a copy, and he, you know, I couldn't remember to log into my old account. So a friend of mine, they're doing the whole sort of refer a friend thing where you got boosted experience if you were playing together with the first friend you referred.
Right.
And you're able to get up through, like, you basically get both the base game and Burning Crusade for like $20 at the time. It's like, you know what, with the free month, you're like, yeah, you know what, that's perfectly reasonable. I'll do that. Yeah. So I did that, and we played, and got to the end of Burning Crusade very quickly. I think it was within the first month. Now I'm thinking about it. Getting level 60 with boosted experience was not hard. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
I broke down, bought Wrath of the Lich King, and I was given a copy of Cataclysm for my birthday that year by him. And I got to max level, actually, eventually, after a few months, and enjoyed WoW, and eventually stepped away from it again, because I was like, you know what, I played it for about a year, and enjoyed it, but I didn't go back to it until basically last year.
Yeah, back to Star Wars Galaxies. Like,
Sure.
I really dug Star Wars Galaxies for a long time. Because similar to the experience you had with Asheron's Call, it did everything very differently. A lot of it was very player driven.
Right.
Like, there are a lot of like you could build your own house and build cities like out in the wilderness, and there are cities like friggin' Tatooine ended up like just paved over towards the end. Like, everywhere you could build a house, someone had built a house on Tatooine.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, when I was playing it, like you gained experience by using certain skills a lot. So if you wanted to be good with pistols, you had to use pistols a lot. If you want a good training negotiation, spend a lot of time running through water and up hills, that sort of thing. And ended up playing, eventually going for bounty hunter, which duh. And this is around the time someone figured out how to unlock Jedi, which was like an Easter egg cooked in there. And Jedi were so OP'd for a long time, which they partially fixed by putting out the player bounty system, where if a Jedi used their Jedi-ness too much in public, like around other players, the game would put a bounty on them, which bounty hunters could then pick up and go hunting for that player.
Right.
That was what hooked me on Galaxies. That was awesome. Because I am almost guaranteed to be fighting someone more powerful than I am, with better advantages, but I'm choosing the terrain because I'm stalking them, and I get the first shot because they don't know I'm hunting them.
Right. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and there are a few hilarious stories, like tracking this one Jedi to his town on Naboo, I think, and he hid in his guild hall because he didn't want to fight me. So I just stood up there at his guild hall for about like 15 minutes, reading a book, waiting for him to come out. Eventually I got a text like, dude, why are you chasing my guy? Because I got a bounty on him. Well, that's not cool. Well, then he shouldn't be using his powers out in the open now, should he? Well, we'll totally tear you up on the forums. This made me laugh out loud. I do not care what people think about me on the forums.
Right.
Eventually, he's like, fine, we'll fight you on the roof of our guild hall. You can do that? Awesome. Okay. So there's like Wild West shootout on top of his guild hall. The entire roof is lined with his guild. And like, he had every advantage. It didn't, and somehow I managed to pull out a win. And I killed him and collected the bounty, and then I was banned forever from that town. I could not go through the zone wall of that town.
Huh.
But like little stuff like that, or like doing a really hard dungeon with a pickup group, and everyone's role playing the whole time. It's a rebel assault on a boarding action on an Imperial ship. And they're like going through, it's like, yeah, we're gonna, the Grand Alliance of the Army, and blah, 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 and everyone's stand at attention. Me and Chris are playing pirates. Because, of course, me and Chris are playing pirates. So we're sitting there, Chris is sitting there emoting a smoke, and I'm emoting drinking. It's like, why aren't you guys at attention? We're not in the Army. So, yeah, just stuff like that about Galaxies. There are a lot, and my problem, the reason why I ended up leaving Galaxies is because Sony Online Entertainment does not know how to handle or balance a game. Like, seriously, you give Bethesda trouble about glitches, Galaxies are swarming with them.
Yep. Yeah, I love their original plan for Jedi in Star Wars Galaxies. Like their original plan.
Oh, with the permadeath?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could unlock them, but eventually, if they ever died, you could play Jedi, but if they ever died, the character was permanently dead. Except you could go around and interact with people as a Force ghost, but you couldn't actually do anything.
Yeah.
I thought that was like, wow, that is simultaneously the best and worst idea ever.
Yes. Yeah, Galaxies also had a lot of other problems that all stacked up, like to do anything you need to get buffed by a doctor, and doctors would have lines where they just sit there just buffing people. And it's just, I don't want to stand in line for 20 minutes to get buffed so I can actually go and do stuff to gain experience.
Yeah, that's sort of one of the minor problems that Asheron's Call ended up having, which is that eventually players realized how powerful buff spells were.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to spend time buffing yourself, and the buffs all had timers on them.
Right.
They had durations. And eventually people were able to write code to create, bots, basically, that they would leave in buff bots. So you give them commands.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I ever talked to an actual doctor. They're all bots.
Right. And so, I actually... so you'll routinely see them... Asheron's Call is still basically technically around, I think. I have to double check. They basically basically became pay to play like last year because they basically we're going to release no more content, and they basically just going to leave it in maintenance mode until they decide to shut it down. I don't know if they actually eventually did shut it down or not. I should check that again at some point. If it's still going, I might dabble a bit on the stream at some point with it again because I love the game still. I dust it off every now and then to play it again because it's Asheron's Call. It was my first MMO, you know. They added a whole bunch of really cool stuff to it, but like they have buff bots still around because there's still enough people playing it.
Yep,
which amazes me. You just walk up to the bot, and these bots are logged in 24/7, basically.
Yeah, like there was always like the same freaking doctors in the spaceport and on Coruscant.
Right. So you walk up to them, they do their buff cycle. It would take a few minutes, and most people, if you have the money, you tip them because that's just the way you do it to pay for their spell components and such.
Yep, same thing in Galaxies.
And people make like trade bots and bots that summon portals because portal magic is a big thing in Asheron's Call. And
yep. I also remember Galaxies had the space combat, which was really cool. It's basically TIE Fighter.
Yeah.
But with like better graphics, and it can completely customize your ships, which is really cool.
Yeah, I remember seeing that too. I never got into Galaxies. I think partially because there was I'm trying to remember what the reason for it was. Part of it is I watched people playing it and just it didn't grab me visually.
Right.
And just not just like the aesthetic. I'm talking about like the animations and the way combat flowed.
Right.
I was like, that just doesn't really look like my cup of tea. Also, as much as I love Star Wars fanboys annoy the fuck out of me.
I totally understand.
And I know for a fact there'd be hordes of Star Wars fanboys in there.
Yeah, Chris's story is about the very active but befuddling RP community in Star Wars Galaxies.
Right.
Like there are parts of Star Wars Galaxies RP community that I did not understand. Like they occasionally wander into RP events and just joining in, which they let you do as long as you weren't trolling.
Right.
There was one I wandered in where they were trying to bust someone's sister out of Jabba's palace, and she's all freaking out and jittering because they're trying to get the explosive collar off of her, and the slicer is like, you need to hold still, I can't do this. And everyone's trying to calm her down, /emo, pistol whip so-and-so into unconsciousness. Dude, we can't be here forever.
So that's kind of cool. I approve that, but that was why I avoided it. I eventually did try out the Old Republic when it came out, and a lot of my fears about the Star Wars fanboys being really annoying were borne out. Because, oh my god, general chat was infuriating.
Yeah.
It's like, oh guys, shut up!
Although, the Old Republic is one of the only games out there that has an open RP community that is not like driven underground.
Yes, they've still got a pretty strong one.
And like you can find people RPing out in the open in social hubs and not being like trolled into oblivion.
Yeah. The other one that I know about that's true in the Secret World, which is the one I still play every now and then here on stream. There are a good chunk of people who play Secret World do RP, from what I understand. It's not the same sort of way that it's not as much emote based as it was in Galaxies from what I saw, and from what our mutual friend Chris has talked about. But they still, they're still. It's not as a densely populated game as a lot of those games are. So, I approve. I approve of people role playing, and that's the big thing. Is Eric and I both have seen this happen, and it's really a shame. Is the people wanting to actually role play in MMOs and getting people who don't do it, for some reason, take serious offense at it.
Yeah, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, that's
it's one thing if you're in the middle of a friggin' dungeon and someone's like role playing out everything's like, dude, just calm down. We need to take out this boss that we've wiped twice on because you're too busy chanting to the gods every time you heal someone.
Right. There's one thing like that, but like if they're out like just having a group sort of role playing together, why people go up to them and annoy the fuck out of them, I don't get it. I
Yeah.
really don't. It's like guys.
And
And
but
there are a large number of people who took great pleasure in trying to drive role players off their servers.
yeah, and I don't understand that. Particularly when I see it happen on roleplay servers.
Yeah, that's the one that gets me. It's like, okay, there's a server that's
It's a
dedicated to role.
designated server for role playing. Like, why?
If you're going to be
Why?
offended by people role playing, play on a different server.
Go to the open PvP server, dude. It seems to be what you want to be
Oh
doing.
God, open PvP. So yeah, that's I promised to mention that there's a chunk of MMO stuff where there's open world PvP, which means that other players can attack you on site basically anywhere. I hate this. And a lot of MMOs had, like, a lot of very early MMOs were just open PvP because they just assumed that's the way it should be because that's the way it was in most MUDs.
Right.
And I'm like, and that really annoyed me. I didn't really enjoy it. And I was very happy to discover that when I started playing Asheron's Call, that there was a dedicated PvP server. And that if you wanted to do PvP in Asheron's Call on not Darktide, the PvP server, you had to actively go and set your flag to be PvPable.
Mm.
In order to attack other players, you had to go and actually do a little mini quest to become PvP flagged. And I was like, sweet! I don't have to deal with people trying to gank me left and right. I approve.
Yes.
Because I find that incredibly annoying and frustrating. I actually logged into Darktide just to see what it was like, and I walked 10 steps away from the starting point and was immediately killed by someone who was like level 100.
Yeah, the whole ganking noobs thing I don't get either. But there's the thing about Dark Age. They had an open PvP server where everyone could attack everyone else outside of social hubs and quest hubs and whatnot. But I was like, but guys, you already have these 3 different factions. You want to kill people, just go out the friggin' go out on the frontier and go looking for people. There's always people on the frontier.
Yeah. But here's the thing. But the thing that I discovered about Darktide is it attracted the vast majority of the PvPers I hated. They all went to Darktide. And the people wanted to PvP for fun because they liked the challenge of it and didn't want to be dicks. For the most part, most people who PvP'd on the non-PvP servers were reasonable people. I mean, there were examples of not that.
Yeah, and this is why I always go to an RPG
RP server, yeah.
An RP server, because they are, I hate to say it, but it's generally a better class of player. They tend to be more helpful and less dickish, even if they don't actually RP.
I find it sort of a mixed bag, personally. I've found that as much as I'm a big in favor of people not fucking with RPers, because of the amount of crap they've taken over the years, a lot of the RPers in MMOs these days are become proactively defensive.
Yes. It's like,
and they get really obnoxious, especially if you don't know the lore as well as they do.
I could see that. Yeah. I've largely fallen out of RPing in MMOs.
Yeah, I
because I just can't be asked to go digging for this underground network of players.
Yeah, for me, it's more I have trouble RPing in text.
I get that.
Like for me, a lot of roleplay for me is in vocal inflection, and that just doesn't translate in text.
Yeah.
Also, it takes time to type it out.
Yeah.
So I basically wanted to get to do RPing in MMOs, but I never really did. I often had like a sort of mental sort of like story going on for my characters, especially in City of Heroes and Villains.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I usually have that going on whenever I play a game, unless there's an actual like dedicated story going on, like say Mass Effect or Deus Ex.
Right. But yeah, I rather liked. But yeah, the other one thing I do want to talk about with MMOs is part of the reason why they're so basically addictive.
Yeah.
And it's not just the sort of big open worlds, be able to play with a whole bunch of people and all this stuff. And because that's all great and wonderful, and big worlds to explore and all that sort of stuff. The other thing that MMO designers realized is they were able to basically turn everything into a giant Skinner box.
Yes. And so there's a bit of that, but here's the thing: I actually hate the Skinner box random number generator model, and I usually gravitate towards MMOs that mimonize that. Like for example, Warhammer Online, like had a token system. Like you still had to friggin' randomly generate the hope you got your gear in the dungeons. So I didn't do a lot of dungeons, but you get equivalent gear by doing RBR, which is like basically PvP. Where the two factions fighting each other,
Right.
and spend those tokens on equivalent gear, which generally looked better anyway because it was spikier.
Yeah, but it's not just the like raid loot thing. There are elements of Skinner boxiness all throughout MMOs.
Oh yeah, the imaginary numbers going up and hearing that ding when you level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's that.
They are designed to psychologically give you that sort of reward satisfaction for accomplishing repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
And like like the quest where it's like kill X number, kill these things to get X number of things that they drop. And if not everyone drops them. That's a Skinner box right there.
Yeah. Oh my god, I fucking hated that in WoW. That was like fucking everything in WoW.
It's rife all over the place in almost every MMO.
Yeah. It's like just have me kill 10 guys. Don't fill up my inventory with useless quest crap that doesn't always drop.
Yeah. But like it's really interesting. The other thing you notice over the course of time with MMOs is how they've sort of where the experience you get for leveling your character comes from has changed over the course of time.
Yeah.
Like the old MMOs, it was all about what you got experience for killing monsters. And you got some small amount for if you did find a quest to complete it. Quests were usually not rewarding experience; they were about getting equipment.
Yes.
Well,
Haha, the Finns.
Oh
Dark
god,
Age
the
of Camelot.
Finliaths. Oh my god. Ugh. Give me. Yeah, there was a spawn of monsters in Dark Age Camelot and Hibernia which were these monsters called Finliaths, which was abbreviated the Finns. And it was the most, if you were able to get a good group going, it was the most efficient way to level. Because it generated tons of experience very quickly. And by tons of experience, I mean it enabled you to level up at a semi-reasonable rate. Because Dark Age of Camelot, after a certain point, you leveled like at just a snail's pace.
Jesus Christ, yeah. Yeah.
Unless you were doing like either dedicated Finns runs or something similar. The problem was that you
basically what I did was I just sat in the bottom of Darkness Falls and occasionally killed albs and mids when the dungeon flipped.
Yeah, there was a dungeon in in Dark Age of Camelot called Darkness Falls, and the entrance to it rotated between the three realms depending on who was controlling the frontier. And it was a great place to earn mass quantities of experience and great loot and tons of money.
Yep.
And stuff that you could use for crafting. It was fantastic, and it was like, oh my god, there's a purpose to PvP in this game.
Yes, it's to control Darkness Falls.
I totally got that. I totally grokked it. I actually kind of enjoyed PvP in Dark Age of Camelot. I was like, this is awesome. Like I got a kick out of once I got to max level. I got a kick out of joining the groups that were when the Control of Darkness Falls flipped to our side, going in to clear out the other factions out of there.
Yeah,
That was cool. That was awesome. That was fun. And Darkness Falls is a great dungeon. I much prefer that for leveling than to the Finliaths. Because the Finliaths was you're camping one spawn over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That was really boring. Whereas
I never did the Finliaths. I never did the Finns.
I got into it twice, and it didn't really enjoy it both times. I basically tried to get into the groups multiple times, and I could not get groups for it. Despite the fact I was playing a Mana Mentalist, which means that I'm, in theory, the single most desired class in all of Hibernia. And that almost nobody played.
Yeah.
And
part of that was because everyone was like, but we have a bard. But I'm better than a bard. But we have
oh
a
no,
bard.
usually it was, oh god, it's a mana mint. Like for almost everybody else, it's like, we have to have a mana mint. We have to have a mana mint. The problem was is that the group at Finliaths would get a mana mint, and the mint would never leave.
Right, right.
So I was SOL there. Also, I never could find groups for RVR outside of Darkness Falls. Like the people who did like Darkness Falls knew who I was. And were like,
Yeah.
yes, get Charon in here. The people who were out in the frontier were like, who the fuck are you? Go away. I'm like, I'm a Manament. It's like, okay, fine, whatever.
All right.
I'll just go back to Darkness Falls. Screw you guys. Like my biggest problem with Dark Age of Camelot, honestly, was outside of our guild and the guild we were aligned with. I forget who they were.
Yeah.
I forget their name. Those guys were awesome. There were a few guilds I actually kind of liked, but like for the most part, our realm on our server kind of sucked. It's like they were kind of jerks.
Yeah, yeah. I'll agree with that.
That said, I still love MMOs. I still play them from time to time. But yeah, so it went from, as I was saying, originally XP was primarily for the monsters you killed and other stuff. They eventually quests started becoming more and more worth more and more experience. And by the time
now it's pretty much inverted.
yeah,
Really.
like you get almost no like killing monsters is just the thing you do to complete quests.
Yeah.
You get some experience for killing monsters, but they don't want to completely remove that. But like there was a period of time in the middle there which was really fucking awkward, where monsters weren't worth a ton of experience, and quests were worth a lot, but you would eventually run out of quests that you could get for your level, and you're sitting there going, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah.
I guess I have to kill monsters over and over again until I hit level where I start getting new quests again.
Yep, I remember that in various MMOs.
That happened in Dark Age of Camelot.
Yep, I remember that in Dark Age of Camelot.
And Dark Age of Camelot,
sucked.
yes, it did, because Dark Age of Camelot had one gigantic flaw for all its good stuff.
It's crappy PvE.
Player versus monsters was boring as all fuck.
It was shit-tacular.
Literally, the only fun I really had doing that was literally Darkness Falls.
Yep.
Because there was there's a chance that someone from the other faction was still lurking around down there to try to gank you, which maybe that was add a little bit of tension. And B, the monsters down there were at least semi-interesting.
Yeah.
Like, everything else, it was just like, oh my god, this is going to take forever to kill it, and it won't be worth that much experience.
Yep.
Whereas, you kill monsters in Darkness Falls, it's worth a good amount of experience, not great. But you get all this...
monsters have mechanics beyond run up to you and start gnawing on your ankles.
Right. And also, they dropped really cool loot.
Yeah.
So there's like all this, like, this is cool. So, you know, it was a cool... And there was like all this cool stuff to explore down there, and like, it was neat. I really enjoyed that. That was like my favorite part of it. But I do have to say, I still say for me, the best MMO I've ever played is still City of Heroes.
For all its flaws, I love the fuck out of Warhammer Online.
Yeah, I could totally grok why you did.
The biggest problem, aside from a general inability to balance properly, Bright Wizards, like, no matter what they did with Bright Wizards, they were always just too much. And there's a lot of left hand was nerfing stuff while right hand was buffing, and nothing being able to find equilibrium because neither side was talking to one another. But there are moments where it was just like, it was like the stuff of fucking legend. For a while, there were two factions. You had Destruction, which was Chaos, Dark Elves, and Greenskins, and Order, which was the Empire, High Elves, and Dwarves.
Right.
They would fight, and the idea was to take over the PvP area of a zone, push the fight into the next zone in that pairing, and eventually get to the fortress. Then if you can't conquer two fortresses, like the Dwarf Fortress and the High Elf Fortress, say, you could then attack their capital, which was really cool. But there was but the problem with this, because of the two faction system, was that if there was any population imbalance at all, one side would start to dominate.
Right.
But that didn't stop people from being fucking heroes. Both myself and I did this a couple times, where it's like desperately defending one fortress, only for Order to get frustrated when their commando squads, because there were commando squads that would go and attack zones that weren't necessarily part of the central fighting in order to push them also.
Right.
would flip his zone to open up another fortress. So all the order would go flooding off to attack the other fortress. So destruction would go and like use their capital to basically teleport to the other fortress and defend that one.
Right.
And it was just, yeah, it was like 3 groups defending like countless order, and same thing, 3 groups of order defending countless destruction. It was awesome. And then we eventually pushed into the city. It was like tight, vicious alley fighting in Altdorf, and like all these like floating islands and whatnot to knock people off of in the inevitable city, which is the chaos capital.
Right.
And yeah, there's just a lot of cool stuff in there, like desperate holding actions to like keep people from flipping a zone for as long as possible. Like remember one time defending literally with my back to the walls of a ruin, defending one battlefield objective. It was like me and the healer in our group. Everyone else was dead. The healer was hiding behind the ruins. No one spotted him for a while, and just I was playing a tank, obviously, and just people just breaking on my shield, literally. It took them forever to take us down. Then they flipped the zone. But holding it for, like, much longer than we should have been able to, like...
Nice. Yeah, I tried out Warhammer Age of Reckoning. It was a game I wanted to like, but there's a lot of stuff there I did like. But it suffered from the same. It was made by the same company that made Dark Age of Camelot, which meant its PvE was a little lackluster. It was better.
It was much better, but yeah, it was lackluster.
I'm not a big PvP fan, personally. I conceptually like RVR, but I found that it didn't work quite as well without the 3 factions. For some reason, 3 factions makes it work a lot better.
It's largely because, like, if one side starts to dominate, the other 2 will team up against them.
Right. I thought it was missing that, and the other problem I found was because it was such a PvP centric RVR centric game, basically. Over time, like, they introduced a bunch of cool stuff, like the public quest idea, which are these big areas where, like,
Oh yeah, the public quests.
Great idea, and it's been adopted by a bunch of other MMOs. Where basically, like something like an event would be happening, and basically, you'd all join in together. People could like wander in, and you'd all be working together to complete the objective for the event, and then
everyone would get credit for it.
Everyone would get credit for it. You wouldn't have to actively form groups. You just walk in the area and be part of it, and that was great. Like Final Fantasy XIV does it at this point with the Fate
Guild
system.
Wars does it.
Guild Wars 2 does it. Rifts does it. Secret World does it to a certain degree for special events.
Right.
God, a bunch of MMOs do it now, and I think they're great. The problem is that after a certain point, people realize that you could level effectively in just effectively in Warhammer Age of Reckoning, doing the battlegrounds, RVR battlegrounds. You could do it just effectively or more effectively than by doing PvE content.
Yep.
Which meant all of a sudden, when people realized that, it went from I was able to find groups and do stuff to I'm wandering around and I have to solo everything, which means I can't do the public quests because you needed numbers of people for them.
Yeah, the final stage you always needed at least 2 people to do.
Usually,
and then you wanted more because you needed to be hyper competent to do it with just 2.
And it's like wow, there's nothing for me to do, and I'd like to do dungeons, but there's nobody to do dungeons with because everybody's off raiding.
Well, raiding in MMO means doing like the big like multi-group dungeons. No,
yeah. So
raiding in Warhammer Online meant like you were literally off like raiding, like you were
they're off
pillaging and stabbing other people in the face.
They're all off in the sort of the big PvP zone, fighting for fortresses and such. And I'm sitting here going, I want to do a dungeon. Nobody's doing dungeons. Do some group. No, the only group content's going on is PvP stuff.
Well, to be fair, fuck Nakari in what was the name of that dungeon?
I don't know. I never did a dungeon in Dark Age in Warhammer Age of Reckoning.
It was one of the end dungeons, and it was like the storyline was like Slaanesh had like corrupted like some elven veil, and both sides wanted Slaanesh out of there.
Right.
And the end fight was against a Keeper of Secrets demon princess. It's a Keeper of Secrets. It doesn't matter. And fuck that fight, man. Jesus Christ, that was a pain in the ass.
I don't doubt it. I never got to do any of the dungeons because, like I said,
Right.
everyone was off doing PvP. And that's fine. That's what they were there to do. That's what they were to have fun with. It just meant that the game was not for me.
Right.
I don't really fault them for that, although I think it did actually end up hurting them.
Yeah. It was the best PvP game out there for the longest time, though.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. But
Like, if you wanted PvP, you played Warhammer.
Right. But I think that's a thing that as much as this is one of the things that I've the
Well, what
RS
happened, what hurt Warhammer more than anything else was the fact that they launched incompletely because EA sucks.
Well, that didn't help.
Yeah.
But honestly, that's a thing I think people really miss about a lot of MMOs. There's always a loud, very vocal contingent of people who are into MMO PvP who insist that a game cannot succeed without a strong PvP community. And they're full of shit.
Dude, look at Champions. No one does fucking PvP in Champions.
Right.
It's still going strong.
No, yeah, right. And City of Heroes was actually doing well before it was closed down. It's just that NCSoft decided that they wanted to close down all their overseas holdings because fuck them.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Literally, City of Heroes was apparently one of the only licenses they had that was in the black. It was making money, and they shut it down because fuck me?
Yeah, fuck you specifically.
Yeah, really. It's like, what?
What sucked was I was starting to get back into City, like, right when that happened, too.
Same. I had just resubbed.
Yeah, like, I was fucking around with my crab spider because I have robot spider arms that shoot laser beams out of my back. Of course I'm going to play this character.
I've been taking advantage of the fact that since I've been I had so many veteran awards, they'd gone to free-to-play model, and veteran awards basically gave you benefits.
Yes.
And it was stuff that you could acquire through just normal play too if you're a free player. But it was primarily aimed to basically if you were a long-time subscriber, you basically got most of the benefits of having been a subscriber. And if you wanted to if you were a subscriber, you got other really cool stuff. Because it was primarily a sub game that you could theoretically play free to play. You could play up to level 50 and do most of the content without paying. But once you got there, you really wanted the really final end game content really was subscriber only. But anyways, that's not the important bit. So I'd resubbed, and then they shut the game down. And I was really bummed. But but that game was doing well and had a large player base. It was one of the more sort of hardy niche games out there. And it didn't have it had a small and very loyal PvP community, guys who really loved the PvP in City of Heroes. But they weren't like rawr, 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 this game can't survive without us. Because they realized this game can survive without us.
Yeah.
Because apparently the City of Heroes forum community at least was one of the few that actually had that realization of, wait, what if we weren't assholes to each other in the forums all the time?
Yeah. Although I do remember, speaking of, because I didn't hardly ever pay much attention to the forums unless I'm looking for specific information.
Right.
Largely because they just end up depressing me.
Right.
But I remember it was not long after they had done the second revamp of Altdorf, where there's like I said, a lot of tight fighting, and the idea was to capture certain objectives, similar to how the normal zones work. You'd capture objectives. This would open up a quest where you had to defeat a warlord, and then you could go and fight their king. But there was this one. It was sometime after they revamped Altdorf for the second time, and there's this one objective in the middle of Altdorf, in the middle of basically the warrens, the rat's nest, the slums.
Right.
Where it's all tight corridors and everything with overhanging bridges and everything, and this is during a cycle when Black Orcs sucked.
Okay.
I played a Black Orc. I always played a Black Orc because you know why? Because they're the biggest and the best, even when they sucked. And I basically managed to hold this alley, just plug it with my big fat green ass, and hold off the entirety of the of Order trying to push us out in this alley for the entire length of the timer, and occasionally wading deep into them, punting their DPS into our DPS, and then plugging it back up again. this was where the phrase "you can't hang with Grimzod" came from, because they were just pounding me with all these AoEs, and other tanks would try to come up to support me and get melted.
Right.
I was one of the few guys that was actually purely defensively spec'd. I was spec'd for defense, knocking stuff down, and punting things. I did no actual damage.
Right.
And yeah, and on the forums, like, Grimzod, my character's name was Grimzod. You need to check out the forums for our realm. Okay, why? Just go. Black Orc's OP, what the fuck? It's just like 3 threads complaining about this one Black Orc in Altdorf. It's like, yeah, are they talking about me? Yeah. Which was kind of gratifying, honestly.
Yeah, I totally rock that. Yeah, I discovered that oh God, yeah. But the City of Heroes forums were the only ones I actually really got. I basically only went to City of Heroes forums a couple times because I was looking information up, and I discovered the community there didn't suck.
Yep.
Which befuddled me. I was very confused for a long time, but I actually became somewhat involved in the forums there because, not to the level like other people, because I just didn't have the time or energy to be an active poster on any forum. I never have, never will.
Yeah, I'm a lurker. Let's put it that way.
But I had fun. I enjoyed it, and there's a lot of really cool stuff, and I met some really cool people. I just really I miss the City of Heroes the community. I miss the game. I miss everything about it.
Yeah.
As I said, it's the MMO I love the most.
The City of Heroes forums were in fact the best. I would go there even though I wasn't playing the game to read some of the stuff going on.
Yeah, I would occasionally link stuff for you guys just to say, you guys have to read this.
I remember one thread there. This is back when they were doing the Arachnos, like, super things that you could unlock, the archetypes.
The archetype career. The archetypes, yeah.
Yeah. And there was, like, information had leaked about the crab spider getting something called the Omega Maneuver.
Right.
And there's all this speculation about it. One guy just wrote, like, this is, okay, confirmed, this is what it does. And he promptly described a scene from Dragon Ball Z, only with all the characters switched to famous NPCs from City of Heroes. Complete with, like, your helmet breaks off and tears streaming down your face as you charge towards the enemy, and you get a thumbs up from Lord Recluse. I was like, wow, that was awesome. Completely baseless, but awesome.
Yeah, there's some other little wonderful things. Like, so there was one forum poster who did an amazing rendition of Who's on First, but MMO related with the various archetypes in City of Heroes.
But who's the blaster?
No, who's the tank?
Ah.
That's what I'm trying to find out! Who's on First is quite possibly one of the greatest stand-up routines ever.
Yeah.
But at any
rate... was the "you can't hang with Grimzod" coming from attacking a fortress? I don't remember. But it became a battle cry for our alliance. You can't hang with Grimzod.
Oh, God. But yeah, at any rate, honestly, I think the MMO has... It's interesting seeing how it's become this sort of almost oversaturated market now.
Oh, absolutely.
There are tons of them out there. A bunch of them are now free to play.
Which is an interesting market, and I've seen both done well and abused all the fuck.
Yes. And there are some great MMOs out there, and there's some terrible ones. I think both of us agree our favorite model for them right now is the one where you pay a lump sum to buy the game outright, and then there's no subscription fee for it.
Yes. It's usually supplemented with a cash shop where you can buy
cosmetic stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we both found that sort of bridges, it's sort of the best of both worlds between, because I like the fact that you make sure there's the lump sums coming in initially for the development company to fund the game from people buying it, without them having to bleed people dry with a cash shop.
Yeah.
And there's enough of a barrier to entry that, as
You
much as I
don't
hate to
have-
say it, I respect the people who I understand completely why people wouldn't want to pay. Ideally, I totally get why you'd want to play a game for free. That makes total sense to me.
Yes.
But I've found that there's a significant contingent of people who play free-to-play MMOs who are infuriating because they're just there to dick around with this game that they don't have to pay for. They don't care if they do bad things and get punished for it because they're just going to move on because it didn't cost them anything.
Right.
And
Keeps the riffraff out.
It helps keep the riffraff out. There's going to be less. There's at least somewhat less of that. If there's at least some money you have to spend on the game.
Right.
That said, I actually get the subscription model. There are people who think it's a completely outmoded concept, and I kind of understand where they're coming from.
On the way out. There's really just WoW and WildStar that are still holding on with it. And I'm not even sure what the story with WildStar is, to tell you the truth.
There are a few others here and there. Asheron's Call hung on for a long time. They kept it up until they were basically decided to put the game into stasis mode. Basically, they stopped charging a subscription fee when they stopped releasing monthly content patches.
Yeah, Warhammer was a sick and ailing beast for a very long time, and they never did the switch over to free to play, which honestly kind of baffled me. But eventually, they decided not to renew the license and shut it down.
Yeah,
which made me very sad because I really, even though I wasn't playing it anymore, largely because all of the people I was playing it with had drifted off to other stuff.
Right.
It still made me sad.
Yeah,
I do so much Zerg surfing before you just are done.
Yeah, I don't mind a subscription fee model if the subscription fee is sort of ameliorated by the fact they're releasing content regularly.
Yes.
That's why I love Asheron's Call. Literally release a content patch every month the game was in existence.
Yeah, no, I am totally I'm totally down with that for that exact reason.
It's like, City of Heroes released at least a content patch at least every quarter, basically.
Although weirdly, like friggin' ArenaNet with friggin' Guild Wars 2, like they're doing the same thing and they don't have a friggin' subscription model.
I know, it boggles my mind.
I am amazed at how they're able to maintain it. They actually had a really interesting ongoing world-affecting plot going on for a while. Complete with their main social hub being turned into a dungeon because the crazy plant chick decided to blow it up.
Wow, I haven't heard one doing that since Asheron's Call. Asheron's Call, literally, Arwick was the big social hub right at the beginning of the game. And in the first major content patch, they blew it up. The Shadows invaded, they destroyed Arwick. If you were logged off in a building in Arwick and you logged back in, you were all of a sudden floating above a pit and fell. You log into space, fall down in the pit, and there are monsters at the bottom trying to eat you.
They did eventually rebuild Lion's Gate, I think was the name of the social hub. But because you killed Scarlet, and there was 2 weeks of rebuilding, and it was back the way it was, except missing a few buildings and a few extra ruins.
Yeah, Asheron's Call did eventually. They also eventually rebuilt Arwick. As part of a major storyline thing, because Asheron's Call had ongoing storyline thing with interactive stuff from the devs, where the devs would run powerful monsters that players had to deal with, and so. I miss that's the thing I miss most about Asheron's Call.
Galaxies did that a lot too.
Yeah, I love shit like that. And it was there was a whole thing where it's they had this big ongoing event. There's this big nasty demon thing that was sealed up in these crystals called Baelzeron, and the players have been breaking these crystals because they didn't know what was going on with it. Because the whole point is that the people who are playing are humans who have been summoned to the world of Dareth, which is where it takes Isparia onto the continent of Dareth, and by this guy Acheron, hence Asheron's Call, to help save the world, basically. And there's not a lot of information. You're basically finding little bits of information here and there. And these people discovered these crystals, these giant crystals that were aggressive, a little bit aggressive. And people fought them and broke one. And it dropped fat loot. And also the players were like, well, I
Well,
wonder if
clearly
there
we're
are more
supposed
of
to be
these.
breaking these.
So they wound up breaking more of them, and eventually, as you went along, the devs released more and more lore that you found in various places. That it turns out these crystals were sealing the powerful demon Baelzeron away, the Hope Eater. And so it came down to like the last. And here's the crazy thing: in order to become PvP flagged on the normal servers, you had to sign a pact with Baelzeron,
Ah.
which is really clever. Here's the thing: the final crystal was in a dungeon you had to be PvP flagged for to get into. And basically, if that crystal's broken, Baelzeron is freed. And so, players are like, well, and the devs left it up to the players to decide what would happen. So if the crystal was
you end up
successfully
with a war between the people that want to break the crystal and free Baelzeron and the people that don't.
right, and so what happened on the majority of servers before the next patch would determine which way they went, which patch they released. And so there were these wars going on in this dungeon trying to protect this crystal, and it fell on most servers. Oh, it fell on every server eventually.
Right.
Like there was a couple that was like it lasted a long time, and like there's one where it was basically getting down to near the thing, and eventually it was destroyed by someone, like one monarchy backstabbing another one and lying about their something or other. The final one though, Thistledown, the server Thistledown, held out until like the day before the patch.
Oh,
and
wow.
the devs are like, well, fuck, we can't have, because logically,
we can't release this with this one group having held out this long.
because that's just it's stupid.
It's a big fuck you to them.
So we have to break the crystal somehow, but we don't want to just say it breaks. That's lame. How are we going to do this? All right. Step one, we're going to have these shadows who are basically working for Baelzeron, sort of, at this point. We're going to send in the most powerful shadow generals to attack the people defending the crystal. The thing they figured out, there's a big monster type called the Grievers, which are these big spider-like monsters, that was defending the crystal in the dungeon. And the players realized that one of the things that happens in Asheron's Call is when monsters kill players, they earn a small amount of experience, it turns out. And monsters, when they level up, because they can level up, most of their experience goes into making them harder to be hit and more health. So what the players on Thistledown realized this fairly late. They're like, wait a minute. What if we just keep sacrificing ourselves to the Griever and make it unkillable? So they did. They basically, you have to do it. You have to, like, every now and then he resets. So they have to do more blood rituals to sate him.
Right.
So they were keeping the Griever big, fat, and happy, and like the player characters couldn't get through the Griever and the players defending it. So the Asheron's Call devs were like, okay, fine, we'll send in the most powerful shadow monsters from that first invasion where they came out and kicked everybody's ass, and they sent them in, and they realized that max player levels had, more players hit max level, and they figured out more efficient builds than early on. So the shadow armies came in, led by Black Farah, and were smacked down like instantly. And like there was this video footage of, like, the shadows attack and the players win, crush, and it's like, players 1, Black Farah 0, with this picture of one of the players jumping up and down on the corpse of Black Farah.
Of course.
And so the devs are like, well, fuck, okay, well, what we're gonna do, we'll tweak the code for the shadow monsters to make them more powerful, because duh. They'll be dev run because duh. And let's see what's going on here. Oh, wait a minute. There's this bit of lore stuff that we had going on here where if you did this quest to get this particular weapon, you had to basically promise to help Baelzeron at some point in the future. All right, let's see which monarchy leaders of monarchies on Thistledown actually did this quest and actually agreed to help out the Hope Slayer. Okay, guys, you are called in by the shadows to pay your debts. What?
Oh.
You must attack the crystal with them. Apparently, one of the monarchs, literally, in his roleplay thing, basically says, "I turned tail and run." Literally turned and ran, and then logged off once he was safe. He's like, nope, not getting involved. But some of them actually followed through on their deal, and they've managed to break it at the last minute. But the cool thing that the devs did, is that Thistledown got a statue commemorating the defense of the crystal.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
That's the sort of shit that I loved about Asheron's Call. And why it's still one of my favorite games, despite its incredible age. It shows its age to this day, but they've up-teched it as much as they possibly could with the old spaghetti code engine they had. I adore it. I'm glad it's apparently, according to Azul in the chat, it's apparently still alive. And it's buy to play at this point. You pay $10 and you can play it indefinitely until they eventually decide to shut it down.
Yeah, Asheron's Call never really stuck with me.
I know that you never wanted to get into it because the graphics style you didn't like. I remember.
Yeah. Something about the aesthetic just didn't click with me.
I totally get that. I mean, yeah,
like even excusing that the graphics engine is ancient.
Right. Yeah, totally. But yeah, I think we that's I miss things like that in MMOs. I wish more MMOs would do that sort of thing.
Chris's character before Galaxies got shut down had a unique title that I just want to tell the story of real quick.
Yep.
It was some like big dev role-playing event where Boba Fett shows up and being run by a dev and has to, and you either help him get his bounty or you fight against him. Chris's character, who was something of a hub to do amongst the RP and PvP circles on his server,
which is normally a community that does not overlap.
Not at all.
Normally, that server, from what I understand, was the exception that proves the rule. Really.
Yes. Where Chris actually managed to negotiate a deal with Boba Fett, basically using like convoluted pirate lawyer logic. And the dev was so impressed with this convoluted pirate lawyer logic that he gave his character a unique title of Anarakel has a unique personality. I forget exactly what it was. He described the logic loopy Boba Fett in. But I forget exactly how he did it.
That's great. Well, I think that's good. We've run a bit long today. We both, and honestly, neither of us are out of stories we could tell about the MMOs we've played.
Christ. I have a ton just about friggin' Warhammer I can tell.
I've got several more I could talk about. Asheron's Call. We have both have stories from City of Heroes.
Yeah,
we could probably do a whole episode on City of Heroes alone.
We could do a whole episode about City of Heroes and Star Trek Online, which is that one I keep coming back to.
Yeah, I love Star Trek Online. We didn't talk about that because we both played it. I want to like that game more than I do.
Same here.
Because I love the space combat. I love the space combat to a large degree, but the ground combat just keeps getting in the way for me.
The ground combat isn't so much a problem for me, but there's the itemization in their cash shop. I was a little more than scuzzy.
Their ships are too expensive.
Their ships are too expensive, and it's a little too scuzzy the way they do things.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the the non-RPG MMOs.
Oh right, like friggin'
games like Warhammer Online, not Warhammer Online, MechWarrior Online,
MechWarrior Online, and Smite,
and like the various MOBAs and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
which
we never got around to that.
No, the only one that we both played really, the one that both of us played was MechWarrior Online, and there's a lot of things we both loved about it, but
I still go back and play MechWarrior Online, but I largely burnt myself out on it because I was obsessed with that game for a long time.
I want to like that game, but God, the cash shop pisses me the fuck off.
I don't blame you.
Mechs are way too fucking expensive in that game for both by cash and by earning in-game stuff. It's like
part of the problem is they nerfed the fuck out of the friggin' the rewards you get for a match.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to have to grind for days to like be able to buy
a fucking commando.
Right. It's like it's like okay, and you can buy it in the shop. Right. Okay. How much does a mech cost in the shop? The super cheap mechs are like $8. It's like. And assault mechs are like 20. It's like, fuck you!
Yeah. You can get a decent medium for like $5. I think the Hunchback is like $5. The Hunchback is a great little workhorse medium. But still, I totally agree.
The prices were way out of line.
They're way out of line.
At any rate, But at any rate, but the MMORPG is what we talked about almost the entire episode, and we both love the genre to death, despite the obvious flaws they have, because they have
so many flaws. Doesn't change the fact that we're totally hooked.
Yeah, we both play them less than we used to, but I still come back to the Secret World, and if City of Heroes is still around, I'd come back to that.
Yeah, I bounce between like 3 or 4 different free-to-play or buy-to-play ones.
Yeah, I'll probably log back into Star Trek Online at some point.
Yeah.
We actually did it. We're doing sort of we'll be doing sort of a semi-ongoing series on our Friday nights, occasional Friday nights on my stream, where Eric and I, and sometimes our friends Word and Alice will hop together and try various free-to-play MMOs. We did Forsaken World last week.
Aptly named.
Yeah, don't play that game.
Oh, that game was ass.
Sorry to people who like Forsaken World. We hated it.
It was ass.
At any rate, thank you guys. But anyways, we'll be doing that in the future with more free-to-play MMOs to try them out and see which ones we like. Do realize that when we actually say we hate something, it's because we hate it. It's not necessarily saying that everyone's going to hate the game. Or that
everyone has to hate Forsaken World. I determined it. It is now a law.
I will confess I will not understand why people like Forsaken World, but apparently there are people who do. So
I can see enjoying the aesthetic.
Yeah, but that's about it.
The aesthetic is not for me. It's far too pretty and happiness and light. But I could see people that would enjoy it.
Yeah. At any rate.
Fucking Dryad.
Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Keep an eye out for Free-to-Play Fridays. If you enjoyed the recording, certainly Grognards. If you're listening to it on YouTube, feel free to hit like and subscribe, and you'll be notified when new episodes go up on YouTube. We record the show every Monday night here on twitch.tv/MechaGM. We record every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be back next week with some damn fool topic. If you've got questions, we normally save time at the end of each show for viewer questions. We had a viewer question this week, but we ran fucking long because we're morons. And we got caught up in our own stories. But if you have questions like answer the show, we'll try to save time at the end of each show for viewer questions. If you got them, you can either email them to us. Our email address is surlygrognards@yahoo.com, surlygrognards@yahoo.com, or you can post them on our forums, which you can find at mechagm.forumer.com. Additionally, if you've got feedback for us, either in the form of constructive criticism, things we could do, things we could do better, or things you'd really like on the show you'd like to see more of, let us know via either format. If you've got show topic suggestions, let us know. We love those to pieces because it means we can tell you what we can talk about what you want to hear about.
Yes.
Also, it saves us time.
Yes.
It means we have to put less effort into thinking about what we want to do.
That's probably the biggest reason for me anyway.
But we really do love being able to do things that you guys will find interesting. So hit us up on those places for that sort of stuff. I tweet out when the show's going to go live. Sometimes we have to reschedule or we have to punt. I keep that updated on my Twitter. My Twitter handle is @MechaGM. Keep an eye on that if you want to know when the show's going to go live, or if we're going to have to punt, skip a week or what have you, or reschedule for a week or anything like that. I think that's it. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope everybody had fun. I hope you found something entertaining in our show where we're blathering around our experiences at MMOs. Because we didn't talk about anything I don't think we gave any particularly useful advice or info other than games we played that we loved.
Yeah.
Or
our 2 favorites got shut down. I'm sad now.
City of Titans, come on.
Actually, I could really, I kind of hope that happens.
I hope it happens. I really hope it works. I'm not
I hope
optimistic.
they manage to get a hold of the IP.
From what I understand, they actually did, which is kind of awesome.
Can I be a crab spider again?
I don't know.
I want to be a crab spider again.
Anyways, catch you guys later. We'll see you guys next week. Till we see you then, be happy, be safe, keep on gaming, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye.